Rarely does the president of Niger, General Abdourahmane Tiani, speak publicly, but when he does, it's never ordinary. It's explosive. In a rare and marathon 4-hour interview, the military leader broke his silence and dropped revelations so shocking they've sent shockwaves across the Sahel and beyond. Calm and measured in tone, yet piercing in content, General Tiani pulled back the curtain on what he claims is a vast and dangerous conspiracy involving some of the world's most powerful players: China, the United States, France, and even Niger's neighboring African states. But amid all the revelations, one bombshell stood out. The Chinese ambassador, he claimed, was caught offering $10 million to terrorist groups operating in the region. That's not a typo. $10 million. Not for aid, not for diplomacy, but directly to insurgents destabilizing the Sahel. Why? What's the real motive behind this alleged deal? Was it to buy influence, to control chaos, or to use terror as a tool for geopolitical gain? These aren't just conspiracy theories whispered in dark corners. They're now being said out loud by the man who holds power in Niger. And if what he's saying is true, it means the fight for the Sahel isn't just about territory or ideology. It's about global powers waging a shadow war in Africa's heart. In this video, we're going to dig deep into these claims, unpack the silence-breaking interview, and ask the questions no one else dares to. Who's funding the chaos? And why now? Stay with us, because what you're about to hear may change everything you thought you knew about the war for West Africa. On the 30th of May, 2025, something unprecedented happened in Niger. General Abdourahmane Tiani, the reserved and rarely vocal military leader of the country, stepped into the national spotlight, and the silence was shattered. In an intense, nearly 4-hour interview broadcast live on RTN, Tiani didn't just speak, he detonated. What followed was a storm of revelations that pointed to a hidden war, one not fought with tanks or bombs, but through backdoor deals, foreign agents, and a coordinated effort to crush the dream of a united Sahel. At the center of this conspiracy, according to Tiani, are forces desperate to sabotage the birth of the AES Confederation, a pan-Sahelian alliance between Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. But one claim in particular has left the world stunned. Tiani accused the Chinese ambassador to Niger of complicity in terrorism. Yes, you heard that right. Complicity in terrorism. He alleges that China, while appearing to be a development partner, has been secretly playing a double game, profiting from Niger's oil while cutting shadowy deals with those destabilizing the nation. To understand the weight of this accusation, we need to go back. China arrived in Niger in 2008 under the banner of partnership and progress. Through its state oil giant PetroChina, Beijing secured the rights to develop the Agadam oil field, home to an estimated 650 million barrels of reserves. The deal included building the Soraz refinery in Zinder, 460 kilometers away, giving China a 60% controlling stake. In 2011, Niger officially became an oil-producing nation, but the strings behind the scenes were already tightening. By 2019, China had launched an even more ambitious project, a 2,000-kilometer oil pipeline connecting Agadem to the Beninese port of Cotonou. The aim? To pump out over 110,000 barrels per day, transforming Niger into a regional energy player. The pipeline is still under construction. But now, with the Chinese ambassador under fire and allegations of funding or enabling terrorism surfacing, a darker picture emerges. Was the oil deal a Trojan horse? Could it be that, under the guise of development, China embedded itself into the heart of Niger's economy while covertly supporting the very forces that threaten its future? In this episode, we expose the tangled web of oil, power, and betrayal. Because if General Tiani's words are true, then Niger isn't just fighting terrorism. It's fighting a silent invasion, one masked by diplomacy, but built on control. However, the progress of the construction of the pipeline has been slow. This is as a result of tensions between Niger and Benin and attacks from terrorists. Yes, the terrorists in Niger have occasionally taken to blowing up sections of the pipelines already constructed. This has not only slowed the completion of the project, but also slowed the growth of Niger's oil sector. Now, given the fact that the oil pipeline project is funded by China, the authorities in China's oil company began to worry that the pipeline project will not be completed. So, they decided to do something. PetroChina, including the Chinese ambassador to Niger, decided to offer the terrorists $10 million for them to stop attacking the pipeline. Imagine that. The worst part is that they had planned to do this without the knowledge of the authorities in Niger. According to the plan, the $10 million would be transferred through Paris and through a woman named Dr. Mina. This Dr. Mina would serve as a focal point in liaison with a fugitive citizen of Niger, Mamadou Salah. After making the transfer, Mamadou Salah would be the one to make the move. He was tasked with taking the money and giving it to the terrorists. However, by sheer luck, the security forces in Niger stumbled on the information. General Tiani stated, "We know where he went, where he obtained passports. He was supposed to go to Nigeria, either Abuja or Sokoto, to collect the money, most likely leaving a commission for the intermediaries." But when the Nigerian authorities uncovered the plot, they didn't stay silent. Instead, they moved quickly, summoning the Chinese ambassador behind closed doors. The message was clear and direct. We know what's happening, and if this cooperation is to continue, the games must stop. The Nigerian leadership didn't threaten, they warned. Either the plan to funnel $10 million to arm terrorists ends immediately, or the entire China-Niger partnership faces collapse. To everyone's relief, the Chinese ambassador backed down. The transfer was halted, the plan aborted. But the damage had already been done. This incident may have been diffused quietly, without headlines or diplomatic fallouts. Yet, it exposed something far more dangerous, something every African leader must come to terms with. Even so-called allies like China and Russia are not here out of charity. They are here for their own interests. Nothing more. Think about it. Why would China even consider paying off terrorists? To stop pipeline bombings? To protect oil infrastructure? At what cost? Did they ever pause to think about the precedent this would set? Terrorists don't take bribes and disappear. They take bribes and demand more. What this truly reveals is chilling. For some global powers, the lives of African citizens are secondary. What matters most is the uninterrupted flow of oil, the safe passage of barrels. And if that means cutting deals in the shadows with those responsible for violence and instability, so be it. The real question now is this: if China, a country often hailed as Africa's partner in development, could even think of such a deal, who else is playing the same game? And just how deep does this betrayal run? If that $10 million payment had gone through, the consequences would have been catastrophic. The terrorists might have spared the pipelines, but they wouldn't stop. They would simply shift targets, turning their guns and bombs toward other parts of Niger. Innocent civilians, men, women, children, would pay the price for a deal made in the shadows to protect oil. And in that moment, something becomes painfully clear. No foreign nation, not even China or Russia, is a true friend of Africa. Like the West, these countries operate by one unshakable principle: self-interest comes first. And here lies the bitter irony. If foreign powers can be so unapologetically committed to their own interests, then why can't African leaders do the same? Why can't they choose their people first? Instead, what we've seen for decades is a pattern of betrayal. African leaders who serve as gatekeepers for foreign agendas. In return, they pocket private rewards while their nations suffer in silence. It's not just disappointing, it's heartbreaking. But amidst the darkness, there is a flicker of hope. A new kind of leadership is rising in the Sahel, fierce, unapologetic, and loyal to the soil. Leaders like General Tiani of Niger, Captain Traoré of Burkina Faso, and Colonel Goita of Mali are cut from a different cloth. They are not perfect, but they are principled. For them, sovereignty is not a slogan, it's a shield. These men have made one thing unmistakably clear: cooperation with any foreign nation, East or West, must serve mutual benefit, or it ends. Even Russia and China are not exempt. And when the day comes that any so-called ally begins to act like the old colonial powers, these leaders won't hesitate. They'll walk away, because for the first time in a long time, Africa is beginning to choose itself. In Niger, the pattern is becoming unmistakably clear. China was one of the few countries that stood beside Niger when the West turned its back. After the coup that ousted the old regime, when France and the United States unleashed a storm of condemnation and sanctions, it was Beijing that offered a hand. According to a former Nigerian minister, it was China's quiet but firm support that gave General Tiani the strength to resist the pressure, to stand tall while the rest of the world tried to force him to his knees. With its long-standing policy of non-interference, China wasn't just a silent partner, it became a powerful one. It poured billions into Niger's oil sector, deepening its footprint with bold deals and strategic influence. In April 2024, Nigerian state television proudly announced a major agreement. The military junta had signed a $400 million deal with China's state-owned oil giant. The goal? To diversify international partnerships after cutting ties with France and the U.S. Niger's Prime Minister, Ali Mohammed Lamine Zaini, and CNPC Chairman Joe Zuokun inked the deal to jointly market Niger's crude oil on the global stage. It looked like the beginning of a strong, unshakable alliance. But then, just months later, everything changed. Without hesitation, without flinching, General Tiani ordered 3 Chinese officials to leave Niger. No diplomacy, no apologies, just a clear message: get out. He knew what it meant. He knew China might retaliate, pull investments, freeze oil partnerships, or worse, but he didn't care. Because for Tiani, there's something more important than any deal, any investment, or any alliance: Niger's sovereignty. This wasn't about bravado. This was about principle. General Tiani made it known that no nation, no matter how friendly, would be allowed to exploit Niger's resources or manipulate its future. Not China, not the US, not anyone. And in that moment, he drew a new red line in African politics. True partnership must come with respect, or not at all. At first glance, the relationship between Niger and China seemed to be blossoming. On paper, they were allies, strategic partners navigating a post-Western future together. China had stepped in when others walked away, and the oil deals were flowing. But then came the shock. Just months after signing a major energy agreement, General Tiani made a move no one saw coming. He expelled 3 Chinese officials from Niger. No negotiations, no diplomatic sugarcoating. Tiani didn't flinch. He knew the risks. Offending China could mean the collapse of multi-million-dollar investments. It could destabilize years of diplomatic buildup, but none of that mattered. For Tiani, the interests of Niger come first, always. And if that meant upsetting a global superpower, so be it. You see, for years, China has quietly dominated Niger's oil sector. Through PetroChina and its 60% stake in the Soraz refinery, it controlled not just production, but the marketing of Niger's crude oil. On the surface, it was a partnership, but in reality, China had the upper hand. And then came March 2024. In a bold and defining moment of his leadership, General Tiani decided to rewrite the rules of engagement. No longer would Niger be the junior partner in its own land. No longer would its resources be managed from abroad. Tiani took a bold step to protect Niger's sovereignty over its oil. And it wasn't just symbolic, it was strategic. It was a message to the world. Africa is done playing by the old rules. Because this is no longer the Africa that waits for permission. This is the Africa that demands respect or walks away. And then, General Tiani made his boldest move yet. In a sweeping act of sovereignty, he signed 2 powerful decrees, documents that would change the oil game in Niger forever. With the stroke of a pen, Niger's military government reclaimed control over 2 of its most valuable assets, the Bilma oil block and the Agadem oil block, territories rich with black gold and long dominated by Chinese interests. For years, these blocks were effectively in the hands of PetroChina, with the Agadem oil field boasting an estimated 650 million barrels and a 60% foreign stake. But under the new decree, that control shifted back to Niger. From now on, Sonidep, Niger's own state-owned oil company, would take a leading role in the exploration, development, and production of the country's oil reserves. This wasn't just a technical adjustment. This was a revolution. For the first time in decades, Niger was no longer just the oil-rich backdrop of someone else's empire. It was a full player in its own story. China would no longer call the shots. Foreign corporations would no longer dictate the pace or the price. Niger was reclaiming its resources and its power. But Tiani didn't slam the door shut. In a tone that was firm but fair, he made it clear: We have no issue with China. But going forward, your role will be defined on our terms. Niger would only seek foreign expertise when necessary, whether in drilling, refining, or production. No more blank checks, no more open doors, only partnership, when and where it serves the people of Niger. And perhaps that is the greatest shift of all, a new era where Africa is no longer for sale, but in control. General Tiani made his stance crystal clear. When it comes to foreign expertise, whether from China or anywhere else, it is not a lifeline, it's a service, and services can be bought, rented, or replaced. With calm conviction, he declared that Niger now operates on a new level, a new dynamic, one where it is Niger first, before anyone else. Foreign partnerships are no longer a necessity, they are a choice. It is not good for a country to take itself hostage. I have nothing against these partners. They are very good and have helped us to produce, and perhaps we will continue to work with them on other aspects. And if there are areas where we need their help, we will ask for it. But that goodwill came with a condition, a clear expectation that foreign companies must respect Niger's sovereignty and its people. That was the understanding between the government and Chinese oil firms. Local engineers were to be prioritized. Jobs and subcontracting opportunities were to benefit Nigerians, not be outsourced back to Beijing. Then came the betrayal. After launching a probe into the oil sector, General Tiani discovered that the agreement was being quietly ignored. The directors of the Chinese oil companies had bypassed Nigerian professionals, continuing to import Chinese technicians, engineers, and labor, shutting out local talent in a sector meant to empower the country. Ibrahim Hamidou, the head of communications for Prime Minister Ali Mohammed Lamine Zaina, spoke out. The companies failed to adhere to the 2024 amendment to the mining code, he revealed. The law was clear. Use local goods, local services, and local labor in the extractive sector. And yet, foreign firms were operating as if that law didn't exist. We're not asking for much, just that companies hire Nigerian subcontractors when possible, and that the majority of those subcontractors should not be Chinese. It was a simple ask, but in the eyes of the military leadership, the refusal to comply was more than disrespect. It was an insult to national dignity. China understands one thing very clearly now: Niger is not to be interfered with. The message from General Tiani and his government has been firm: respect our sovereignty or walk away. Niger has no plans to negotiate with terrorists, no backdoor deals, no compromises. The mission is simple: eliminate the threat, not buy it off. And China, to its credit, has respected that decision. This approach isn't new for Beijing. It's part of its long-standing non-interference policy. But in the context of Niger, it's a stance that truly stands out. When Tiani signed the March 2024 decree to reclaim Niger's oil sector, China didn't lash out. There were no threats, no diplomatic tantrums, no sanctions. Instead, Beijing kept calm, a sharp contrast to how the West typically reacts when its interests are challenged in Africa. And just weeks later, on April 8, 2024, China made its move, not with pressure, but with diplomacy. A high-level delegation arrived in Niamey, led by Chinese Ambassador Zhang Fang. They met directly with the military leadership, including General Tiani himself, not to protest, but to understand, to clarify, to ensure that despite the shifts in control, the partnership would remain intact, but on Niger's terms. China reiterated its commitment to continue working with Niger in the oil sector, but more importantly, it showed that respect and patience could go much further than coercion or control. Because in this new chapter for Africa, it's not about who has the money, it's about who respects the mission. And Niger's mission? Total independence, total control, and a future written by its own people. After the closed-door discussions with Niger's military junta, Chinese Ambassador Zhang Fang stepped in front of the press. Calm and composed, he delivered a message that spoke volumes. China, he said, was satisfied with the rational friendship and fruitful cooperation between both countries. He acknowledged, without resistance, that Niger's new leadership placed absolute importance on political and economic sovereignty. And that, he explained, was the very foundation behind General Tiani's bold decision. Zhang didn't protest. He didn't deflect. Instead, he reiterated China's long-standing contribution to Niger's oil sector, reminding the world of the Soraz refinery, the 2,000-kilometer pipeline, and years of investment. And in closing, he made one thing crystal clear: China remains committed to working with Niger in the spirit of mutual respect and development. That kind of response? It shocked many, because in most cases, especially in Africa, such confrontations don't end so peacefully. But the story didn't stop there. It was later revealed that the meeting ended with a new agreement. Niger would allow China to serve as the international exporter of its oil. No threats, no pressure, just a negotiation resolved through dialogue, mutual understanding, and respect. Now, imagine if it had been the United States or France in China's place. Let's be honest, there would have been a very different outcome. Denials, condemnations, maybe even sanctions. Western powers have long been known to react with force, not flexibility, especially when their strategic interests in Africa are challenged. And this, right here, is why China is becoming the preferred partner for many African nations. It's not just about infrastructure or investment, it's about approach. China's non-interference foreign policy and commitment to equal benefit over domination is a breath of fresh air on a continent exhausted by exploitation. Where the West demands, China negotiates. Where the West imposes, China collaborates. And for countries like Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, that difference could define the future of the continent. So when some say the AES countries are just swapping one colonizer for another by choosing China or Russia, they're wrong. The leaders of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso aren't trading sovereignty, they're protecting it. Even US senators have admitted they're smart, calculated, and fearless. If Russia ever oversteps, they'll call it out just like they've done with the West. Why? Because they know Africa's value. They know the continent doesn't need to beg for respect. It just needs to stop depending on those who exploit it. The day African leaders truly understand that is the day the continent begins to rise. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments, like this video, and don't forget to subscribe. The future of Africa is being written right now.